Right, so I'm here with Rayman, who is the CEO of Grey Consulting and one of the founders as well. And we're here to basically talk around, again, the corona crisis, what's happening, and have a remote meeting about it because we're being very sensible and not meeting face to face. So first off, how are you finding everything?
Well, like everyone, we go through waves, don't we, of ups and downs. But I'm generally feeling grateful that I'm not ill, and we've managed so far to sort of stay away from it. And I'm sort of getting used to it, I guess. This is the beginning of, I think, the fourth week that we've been working from home. So yeah, it's something which we're beginning to find like the upsides in a bit, I guess.
Yeah. How are you managing to be creative remotely?
That's a good question. Well, I found, and we actually ran an event on Zoom last week all about that, which just shows you how creative you can be. Actually, one of the things, we spoke to a bunch of artists about this question. We asked them what they thought, and we had a composer, illustrator, and an artist. And one of the things they said is actually often they would seek isolation in order to make themselves more creative, weirdly, because they can just focus on their task and really kind of get into it and not be distracted. There's these famous things like artists go on retreats.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, we're all in this big whether we're using it for art or not is another question. But it struck me that you can be quite creative in that environment. I mean, funnily enough, we do consulting work for marketing clients primarily. And so not always just doing creative stuff for making kind of marketing communications. That's aside to what we do, but part of it. But we've actually found that on the development of kind of creative work, it's actually been strangely more efficient. I think people are being quite productive, and I don't think it's just driven by fear of job security and that sort of stuff. But there's something about a bit of quiet time on your own, a bit of shared time. I don't know. It's quite surprising, actually.
I mean, have you seen any key trends that are emerging from this? Whether it's loads of people are wanting to get into innovation a bit more to make sure that they're staying up to date with what's happening and are ready to sort of ride the wave when we come back in, or digital transformation. Have you seen any client needs that are really a key trend at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. The trends that we're seeing, I think, are certainly everyone being more resourceful than they normally are and more prepared to try new things, whether that's from the most mundane, having to pick up a different brand than you would normally use at the supermarket because there's no choice, through to changing your working habits. And people, even our parents, are learning how to use Zoom for the first time. So that's true for corporates as well as for individuals. So I think it's actually going to be looked back on as a really interesting, quite surreal time, but also a time of quite a lot of experimentation and testing. So I think there's a lot of that happening. I suspect lots of firms are realizing, we can be quite productive. We don't all need to work from home, from the office all the time. Why are we paying all that rent for that floor space? Do we need it? I'm not desperate to spend my entire week commuting into a central London office and paying, whatever the cost of that is per month. I think that in itself is a very small example, but a very interesting example of the shift. From a client point of view, I think because we work with businesses across all different verticals, from banking at one extreme to FMCG kind of cereal companies at the other. And it very much depends on the situation they find themselves in. So some of the people who are in quite challenging roles in, say, banks, for example, have had a lot of pressure on themselves to get things out to the market quickly, to explain what they're doing, to be supportive of customers. It's quite high intensity, quite high stress. At the other extreme, we've got people who are who sell food, for example, who manufacture food, who are absolutely, they're absolutely going crazy. Huge volumes of sales going on. They can't stock the shelves fast enough, and all their team is being put into kind of supply and distribution and getting it out there, which has been their focus for the first couple of weeks. I think now, as we start to get into, this is a European perspective really, as we start to get into the next sort of phase of this, I suppose, that enduring it longer, I think we'll start to see people beginning to take stock now they've got plans in place for the immediate challenges. Think a bit more about, well, what do we need to adapt or innovate or mitigate going forward for the next 6 weeks, say, or the next 6 months. So there's a bit more task force stuff beginning to bubble up, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've spoken to some of my candidates about as well is the banking world, as you've mentioned. it's going to be completely almost revolutionized, because there's going to be need for very quick results, i.e. cash in bank ASAP. So you don't want to wait for payments to take, a considerable amount of time. What's going to happen with checks? Because obviously, I write a check that's got sort of my germs on it and put it back in. That's completely different experience that might need to be rejigged. And also physical branches, because everyone at the moment is going to be needing to do their finances online. Yeah. So, what's going to happen to the physical branches? Are they going to be really needed anymore? Who knows? So it's really interesting to see what is going to happen and what's going to stick and go. But I know that sort of you guys as well, one of the things that you're really good at, you work very globally. Do you think that because everyone is working from home, everyone is available on a Zoom call, will that open the world up a bit more for you going forward as well?
I think it's really interesting you say that. So one of the things that it seems to have removed is a sense of distance, this process. I guess because we're video calling people, but we just are about to start work on a project out of LA and London. And we've always meant to do it with this team. It's a team from part of our operating company over there. But we never got around to it. And then suddenly it seems feasible. And I don't know, somehow, yes, maybe the fact we're all on Zoom removes that sense of geographical distance. I do really wonder on two counts, how much we'll be flying again after this. Because I think, fundamentally it shows it is possible to remote work and remote work across virtual teams, across geographies relatively easily. On the other hand, I think we may find countries that are resisting letting you come in unless you've got the right passport, or whether you've got the right, they're going to ask you for kind of vaccine certificates or whatever before you go in. So I think it could be a long time before we're flying across the Atlantic again or whatever, which I used to do that relatively frequently in an offset way, I might add. But, I think that's really fascinating. I think there will be a big shift. We did a video call last week where we had people at Melbourne breakfast, London, it was about 10 p.m. and States was sort of lunchtime or whatever, mid-afternoon. And that seemed to be an effective way of running. It was a bit tiring for us, but I think there'll be more of that actually. It's hard to put your finger on it as and I know people have talked about global conference calls for years, we've all done them, but this does feel qualitatively different.
No, it's a really, as you said, it's a really interesting and strange time. And I mean, also as well as the remote working piece, as you've mentioned about potentially the office not being as needed anymore, this also gives us a really good opportunity to tailor a working day to people's brains, because I'm a morning person, so I'd rather do all my work in the morning. Some people would rather sleep until 4 and then work, 4 till 2 in the morning. And, do you think that this is going to give people's brains that bit more freedom to do that and work for their brains?
I mean, it's interesting. I was trying to, in the first few weeks, it was quite chaotic, I think. And we were on too many video calls and kind of a lot of panic, frankly, I think, in lots of people and teams that I experienced. We ended up focusing on we have a kind of weekly check. We check in every day, but we have a weekly kind of template that we use where we just talk about the outcomes for the top 5 outcomes for the week that we want to achieve. And, it doesn't matter if you don't necessarily get to them, because probably we are over optimistic about what we can actually achieve at the moment, just in terms of time. But that focus on outcomes rather than the hours spent or where you do it, I think is a really smart way of dealing with that, because you're not then micromanaging or worrying about what hours people work. I mean, in fact, one of my team members has been working, I think, more fluidly across. He seems to be okay to do bits of weekend work, but then he's doing more exercise during the week than he might do, I think, normally, because, I guess the barriers between work life and home life become very blurred, don't they?
Yeah.
We were joking about how not to work from home a few weeks ago on one of the Zoom calls that we did. I'll do a plug for it, actually. We run an event called the Distance Resistance.
I was about to talk to you about that, but yeah, do it now.
Get it out. You can come to it. But and we were laughing about that, and then we were laughing about LFH, live from home. Like, there's two things that are really blending at the moment, and that might be another example. I think you're right, of where our working practices start to change. I mean, I can certainly see myself doing 2 days a week from home, maybe after the virus is over. I think I get a lot done, and I mean, I do miss the physical connection, and there's something about the chemistry of meeting somebody, and certainly in the recruitment world that would be a big part of it. But nonetheless, it is quite an interesting shift. I mean, I guess we weren't using Zoom quite as much. We were using different platforms that maybe not as smooth, and dodgy video conferences around tables, whereas this somehow feels there's a personal component, isn't there, to
Yeah.
like looking into someone's house. And I've met most of the people that
Yeah.
I'm working with, their children at some point pop into frame because
Yeah.
they're bored, and that's okay. It's actually really nice in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really, yeah. It's cool that you get to see into someone's sort of world and the space that they create as well, like that. It's a bit.
It's a privilege.
Yeah, it is. It is. You're being invited into another space. So I did want to talk to you about this as well. And I've seen all of the posts, and I actually did watch one of them a few weeks ago. The distance resistance. Talk to me about it. What is it?
You must come again. Yeah. So we just it was really like a desire to do something, to kind of do something, frankly, and be active in the face of what's happening and not be paralyzed. And what I've discovered is by putting together a theme each week and getting a couple of speakers that come along, and then I interview them. I think it's best if I interview them. We're learning how to get the sort of format effective. And we get about 20, 30, 40 people turn up. And the topics are geared around things that are bothering us. So the first week was how not to work from home, which was a kind of a light-hearted take. Last week we had how to be creative in isolation. This week on tomorrow, Wednesday, will be about how to come out of isolation stronger than you went in, which is more about psychological development. So we've got a psychologist and a coach and some interesting characters we're trying to line up for that event. And there's something about the mix of new faces, because actually we're not meeting that many new people right now. I think we see the same team faces quite a lot on video, and I love them dearly, and it's nice to see some new people. It's that, plus we do it, people are kind of encouraged to bring a cup of tea or a glass of wine, whatever suits them, so they're kind of in a chill out mode, and then trying to throw in a bit of inspiration as well. And the combination seems to be nice. And last week we applied our learning about how to be creative in isolation to a charity at the end of it, called the Railway Children's, for International Children's Charity. So we were sort of applying what we were learning and our general creativity and collectively to a good cause, and it just felt like an uplifting point in the week. And frankly, that's what the distance resistance has become. So
that's really lovely.
How long it will last, I guess we might do it in person in future. I don't know.
Or as we talked about the global thing, you get people from all over the world. So if you can't meet them in
the timing of it, I'm trying to time it so it's at the end of the British working day, which makes it sort of midday in the US and a bit maybe inconvenient for them and quite late for Asia. But nonetheless, it's been, I'm pretty pleased with it, really. Lots of different people in different worlds, clients and colleagues and friends. I actually made contact with a guy that I haven't spoken to in 15 years. He turned up onto it, and we're now back in touch, which is amazing.
Yeah.
There's a weird upside to this, potentially.
Yeah. I mean, moving forward, and we don't know when we're going to move out of this, but what are the key things that you think you're going to take from this isolation world into, I guess, normality again, or the new normal?
Yeah, I think I'm really impressed with my team's ability to be incredibly responsive to what's happened and flexible. So we designed a brand new strategy product called AIM, Adapt, Innovate, Mitigate, which we've been helping clients with. We found, I just think we're actually getting quite a lot of business, which is really fascinating. I think it reveals something about maybe being flexible, being fast, being prepared to kind of do what it takes to help people out. And maybe we always sort of knew that, but this has really proven it to us. And I'm really proud of my team for that. And I think that's I wouldn't want to lose that as we move into the next world, or the world that comes next. So that's one. I think there's a lot of personal reflection going on, I'm sure, either individually or collectively, about how you work as a team. And I wonder, how will we be more bonded or less bonded as an experience of this, what's happening as, our team cultures. In some ways, it's something we're all going through that's going to, mark us for the rest of our lives, probably one way or another. I'm sure that sort of wartime spirit people talk about, but it's quite unifying. So what's the kind of corporate version of the NHS clap on the street at 8 p.m? I wonder if there's a version of that which makes you feel more bonded to your neighbours, right? So I wonder whether that's happening in our work teams.
Yeah. I mean, do you think that, so for Grey Consulting moving forward as well, are there any areas that you've become aware of during this that you're looking at and think, oh, I think, I'd quite like for us to have a little bit of a focus on there, or, this is more open to us now? Is there anywhere that you sort of think, okay, we can maybe adapt and sort of wiggle into there?
Yeah, I still think our overall focus is right in terms of transformation and strategic innovation for clients. It's not something that I'm keen to kind of, I don't need to walk away from. That's really good. But I think we've realized that we don't always have to start every engagement with a kind of £500,000 price tag. You know, actually we can be helpful and work on smaller things, and that they'll bubble up into other interesting avenues of work. So that was kind of interesting. I think I'm really delighted to see that people are looking for advice and support. Quite a lot of the work that we're doing is it's sort of interesting. It's not core, it's not true. It's stuff like how do you change a team culture? And we're actually advising a client how to do remote working, which is kind of fascinating. I would never have chosen that as a topic a month ago.
Yeah.
But actually we've been doing lots of it, and we're working lots of different people, lots of different ways. So we're getting really broad perspective on that. So that's quite useful. And that supports the sort of cultural transformation work we've been meaning to do. Remind me of the question again.
I was just going to say, are there any areas that you've become aware of now that you think Grey Consulting could move into? I mean, you've kind of explained it with the remote working piece. You know, a few months ago, you wouldn't have really thought to take a project on advising someone how to work from home. But now,
yeah. I think, and then we've also, I mean, quite a lot of the things that we've been talking about with clients have come to fruition. So we did a really, because there's quite a lot of work you can still do, even though you're not in an organization walking around an office or whatever. So we, for example, worked with a pharmaceutical client. We won a brand new client last week and delivered the work within about 10 days, which is just to look at a launch of an ethical product in their category and see, you know, like a sustainable product, and see what the analytics show about how well it was picked up and what impact it had on their overall business. And that work's relatively simple to do, and it's stuff we've talked for a while, but it's perfect for an environment where you're in isolation, because you can get it all done, you farm out the bits you need to do, it's really fast, and actually it's been, you know, that's probably something which we could do a lot more of going forward. The other thing I think I'm not quite sure about, which is possibly concerning for us all actually, is we were pushing very hard and are really on sustainable business and sustainability and thinking about it from a kind of consumer perspective. So how do you get people to buy into sustainable propositions and products?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how much headspace people have right now for thinking about climate change.
I was about to say, what do you think is going to happen with the sustainability?
Yeah, I think in reality though, my suspicion is that when this passes, two things will happen. One is, this is probably, I'm afraid to say, I think, a foretaste of what significant climate change impact might be like. More viruses, more disruption to supply chains, more strange experiences for us. And that, you know, that in 10 to 20 years, over the next 10 years, that could happen again. At the same time, you know, we're witnessing how nice it is not to have pollution in London, for example. I don't know if you've noticed, but the sky is clear. Air is clean and the birds I can hear, and it's kind of amazing. I will really miss that after it goes. So there's an upside. But I think people's minds are very much stuck in the here and now, and that's natural. Humans are really focused on survival and living for the present. That's how our brains work. But actually, we need to think quite hard about what's next. And there's lots of articles being written out there in the press about what sort of world do we want to create after this. One thing for sure is the old world is gone.
Yeah.
And even when bits of it come back, it'll feel different, I think. So I'd hate to see that opportunity wasted by me, by us, by all of us, really. It would be a shame if there wasn't some kind of positive outcome. Just like the NHS was founded after the war. And frankly, the war was probably a lot worse than this.
Yeah.
Know that. But yeah.
That's a really nice. I mean, I was gonna, just for a sort of final, to end on a bit of a high. I know that you've already brushed on. I know you've already sort of touched on really some positive things come out of it. If you had one take home, this is a positive, this is a silver lining that Grey Consulting or yourself are experiencing as a result of this, you know, what would you say is the positive?
Well, you know, I think really you have to choose how you respond to uncertainty and anxiety and threats like this. And you can either see yourself as enduring and having to deal with the horror of the whole thing and kind of crumbling. And some people will do that and be quite fragile, and we should look out for them. But or you can see it as, if you're lucky enough not to get ill, see it as an opportunity for personal learning and personal growth. And I'm really seeing that in my team and in me myself. And I think, you know, we've had some quite significant developments in our mind state, really. I think about how we do our work and what we care about and what's important. And you know, that's how to see it. That's why the theme for this week and in our distance resistance and in my head is just how to come out of isolation stronger than you went in. That's the opportunity for everybody, unless you're ill, and even then, unless you're ill, that's for everybody. There's the opportunity to come out of isolation stronger than you went in, and I'd like to have that attitude, really.
Yeah. So distance resistance is on a Wednesday at 5, isn't it?
5:45 p.m.
5:45.
Yeah. I will share it with you.
Okay, and I was going to say, and you can. Yeah, we'll tag it on the post, and you can just presumably get access via LinkedIn.
Yeah. You've got an Eventbrite link, and I've got another one coming as well. So I need to
Perfect.
Get on that,
awesome.
Are you on? Do you get our mailings then or not?
Yes, I do. Yeah. I'm on the distance resistance mailing, so yeah, I can get the link. But what we'll do is we'll share info so that if people, as a result of seeing this video, would like to come along, which I'm sure they'd be welcome to, have a chat and learn something and have a bit of a virtual networking session. We'll attach a link and people will be able to have access to that as well. But thank you so much.
You did a great job. That's really professional and very, very well. You've obviously done it a few times, but it's very slick.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well,
by the way, just anyone doing anything positive and constructive and active is evidence of a good company, as opposed to just There's some people who are in paralysis, just frozen. So this is a good start, I think, generally.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Well, yeah, great to chat to you. And we'll keep in touch.